8:33 is called to order. Dr. Lake, do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Jen and a second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, tonight's discussion topics is about the Compass goals and the 2026-2027 budget goal setting. We'll start with you, Dr. Tara Sparks.
Oh, actually, we're starting with me.
Very well.
But we're not starting with my goals. We're starting with my explanation of the school climate and culture report. So, Colin, if you can move to the next slide. Really just setting up the workshop by sharing with you the school climate and the parent, family, and community involvement report. This is part of our MSIP 6 requirements to submit. There is a link here for your reference, the community's reference, but if we go to the next slide, we just want to explain to you and show you what we do. We survey based on these 3 indicators that you see, and then how we do it through the listening and learning survey, our staff survey, and our SEL student screeners. So what we want you all to know this afternoon is that we use the feedback from this report from our community members, staff, students, and parents to inform the development of our district Compass goals. And with that explanation, I will hand it over to Dr. Sparks.
Fabulous. We have 2 topics tonight from Teaching and Learning. They are Compass goals from this year that will marry into next year's Compass document as well, because this is ongoing high-level work that we are doing as a district. The first, if we can go, yep, perfect. Our first group is to talk about secondary standards-based learning. I want to give you an update on the task force as they're coming up to join us. As you remember, last year we had a task force that looked at the potential expansion of standards-based learning and grading practices in 8th grade and above. And coming out of that task force, we had a series of priorities and recommendations that were made that really required us to take a deeper dive. And as a result, we had a steering committee comprised of teachers and administrators from grades 6 through 12 to really identify how we can meet the steering committee recommendations. So they are going to share with us our process. So as you go to the next slide, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jenna Wright, Truman Assistant Principal, Ashley Allen, Truman English Language Arts Teacher, Patty Thomas, Truman Social Studies Teacher, and Courtney O'Connor, Lindbergh High School Math Teacher, to summarize our process.
All right. First of all, as Tara said, we had our steering committee that was made up of a variety of teachers and administrators. So this gives you a list of who has been a part of this committee. I will say this is the group that meets, and then we take that information and go out and get feedback from other groups. So if you want to click to the next slide. This is kind of the timeline that we ran throughout this year. So we were taking the information, doing a lot of research. We did site visits. We had Tom Schimmer come in and do professional learning for all of the secondary teachers and staff, and really have taken that, come up with some ideas, then done the feedback loop. So we have met with the Teaching and Learning Board Advisory, with different teacher groups, our department chairs, administration, and as we kind of come up with some different ideas, run it by them, get some next steps, and then come back. And so at this point, we've really taken a bunch of survey feedback, a bunch of information in, and kind of drafted some ideas for next year of what we want to start to move forward with and look into. So that's what we're going to share a little bit more about today. Next slide is our task force priorities. So everything that we have done throughout the past couple of years, but really digging in this year, has been based on these priorities. These priorities came directly from all of the feedback groups that we had before. So really a priority that came up was an overall course grade by semester. When we moved from traditional grading at the middle school level to the standards-based grading, one thing that we heard a lot from parents was, but how's my kid doing overall? Where are they? I know on this standard, this is where they are in this standard, but how are they really doing? And so a thing that was requested was having an overall course grade by semester. So we'd have each of those individual standards, but we'd also have that cumulative, here's how you're doing. Then talking about that academic rigor and really clearly defining that highest level, the EE level, to know what do you have to do to achieve that? How do we make sure that everyone is getting taught at that really high level and has the opportunity to get there? And how can we tweak the systems to ensure it's not the pie in the sky thing, but really something that all kids have exposure to? And then looking at clear and consistent universal grading expectations, we did some initial rollout, and not that every classroom has to be the exact same, but having more consistency to make it clear for families. When you have 8 teachers now, it's a little different to figure out, what does that grade mean? How does my kid take a retake? What does this look like? So just trying to have a little bit more consistency across the board, and then making sure that there is feedback on really what students have learned and what the next steps are to improve. So all of our kind of conversations, decisions have come back to these 4 top priorities.
So the solutions we came up with for 6th and 7th grade was to move to a 4-3-2-1 scale, not 4 out of 4, 3 out of 4, but level 4, level 3, and so on. And that replaces the EE, MESD, AC, which we feel like was kind of skewed in meaning for a lot of different teachers. So then that helps us solve the issue of giving an overall grade at the end of each semester. So then all the standards grades will be averaged together to provide an overall grade at the end of the semester. And it will be A, B, C, D, and F, which helps bridge the gap between elementary standards-based and then 8 through 12 traditional grading. So we are also going to be streamlining things for 6th and 7th grade. So right now, all subjects can pick how they want their grades to be reported at the end. So they can do like most recent, decaying average. There's like a million things, I don't know. We decided we're just gonna do average for all of them, for all subjects. And then all grade levels are gonna have a common policy for retakes and late work to kind of help with the communication to kids and parents.
And then so for 8 through 12, a lot of things aren't necessarily changing. We're just going to be revising some like different practices amongst like 8th grade and then into the high school. So we're going to continue with A, B, C, D, F, and on a 100-point scale with the traditional like 90 is an A, 80 is a B, et cetera. That's not really going to change. We're going to revisit our building level practices. So retakes versus reassessment, how does that look in our different courses? How do we try to streamline that across the high school so it's easier for kids and parents to understand? And then revisiting the conversation about preparation versus assessment. When we switched a couple of years ago, we said that preparation, which is often called homework, isn't going to count for a grade, and it's only going to be like the assessments that you take in class. We're currently potentially talking about giving like a small percentage grade for that. It's still potentially in the works. But redefining like what is a preparation grade versus what is an assessment grade, and then trying to streamline that across different departments. And then talking about streamlining against PLCs or professional learning communities, courses, strands, if you're talking like honors versus like our college prep levels or versus our what'd you say? Our dual credit, our AP, like all of these different things that we have working together, making sure we're having at least similar practices amongst those different strands. And then continuing to explore our effective grading practices, going back and talking and looking at rubrics and proficiency scales, not implementing necessarily any of these school-wide, but maybe potentially in our different courses, on our different assessments, so that in a couple more years we can look at 6th and 7th grade and see if these standards are something we want to revisit at the high school.
So what comes next? So on April 21st, there will be another task force meeting to where we will present this information again, just for the feedback loop. Want to make sure that we're having a variety of voices. In May, we'll continue to share and communicate with all the stakeholders in terms of what the changes are going to be and what the goals are going to be for next year. The task force will continue to meet over the summer, and our goal is to create common rubrics, common documents, common scoring guides that are accessible and available for different departments and for the needs to match the supports going forward. And then going into next year, the PLCs, professional learning communities, and the departments will have the time to be able to work through these, be able to have the time to collaborate and work together to create what is best for their particular departments and for their grade levels.
What questions? Oh.
Do you foresee any changes for next school year, the 26-27?
We had a lot of conversation about moving to the numerical, whether or not that was something we should push back for a year or do immediately. But the teachers, especially in 6th and 7th grade, they're kind of in this limbo area and are ready to make some of these changes. So we are suggesting that we move to the numerical scale for next year and then take the time to really revise the proficiency scales over the year. So parents will get that overall course grade next year and see that difference. And then while we update scales to align with that.
So then for the 8th to 12th grade level, you're not foreseeing any changes for next year, though?
We will see some common grading practices happening across that streamlines that, but not in terms of, that's kind of that behind the scenes work that happens with kids. Okay, you can take this many retakes, or this is what you have to do in order to take a retake, but it's not going to be a full-on grading scale revision.
Okay. So some of those procedures that, okay.
Or
'cause
to Courtney's point also, we talk about Lindbergh Life Success Skills. One of those success skills is work ethic and effort. And as we've had the preparation grade that has counted for 0 in course grades, that's become an issue of, are we really holding that to a skill level that we need it to for students to be successful later in life? So that part of the conversation around grading skills would be a change for next year as well.
Okay. And I know you discussed, like you said, among departments, and I'm assuming that means kind of at the high school level. Do you see some of those common practices maybe across the departments?
We, at the high school and in 8th grade, we have talked about some beginning language of kind of minimum requirements for like everyone at the high school has to do at least this much. And so it was like be able to retake summative assessments, so like bigger assessments and things like that. So we're working on our kind of top down, what are the minimum that every single course has to do? And then within the individual courses, they have maybe the freedom or the autonomy to potentially do outside of that minimum requirement, a little bit more retakes if they feel like, depending on their course and the level and that kind of stuff.
So for example, like one of my child's classes is like, you can retake, but if you get a lower grade, then that one counts. And so like, then there's this pressure of, well, then maybe I don't want to retake it. Like, even if I do the work, because I don't really know. And so I'm just wondering if things like that are going to be a little more consistent between the departments?
That's the plan, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
When you say you're going to average the grades, the 4.31s to get the final grade, is that going to be, on the report card, like for quarterly, there's the letters. Is that going to be just like at the quarter, we're going to look in for each standard, see what you're at, or is that you mean for like each assignment that they do, everything will be averaged?
It'd be the average of the standards. So if they're, for ELA, for example, if you have a standard on writing and you have a standard on reading and all of the different standards, you look at those scores of each of the, so if there were 3 assignments under the reading standard, that would get averaged into, this is where you are in the reading standard. And then that score would be averaged into the total score of all the other standards. So there's kind of multiple averages happening, if that makes sense. And there is a way for Infinite Campus to do that. We've seen model demonstrations. Michelle McRoy's been working on how to get that going. So it's really the best of both worlds. So you can see where the strengths and weaknesses are that of your child as a learner, but also comprehensively, what does that mean?
And then is the proficiency scale going to be like a 4? It's not going to match up exactly numerical. Like a 4 is an A. It would be more like 3 point something above is an A.
What we've used, and we've confirmed this with Impact, Impact uses 3.25 and above. And they've been using it over the course of this entire year, and they really feel like it has become an accurate representation of what they would see in a traditional ABCD format. So yes, our plan is to adopt the Impact grading scale for the averages of 6th and 7th grade.
I'm just thinking about it. I'm picturing my child's report card and going, hey, Mom, I think I got all A's. I'm like, well, I don't know. What did you get? And I'm like, no, there's meeting expectations. There's this. And so I think that will be clearer.
Well, and one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about is, and I think we've had this conversation as well. In Canvas, if you are a student and you get a 3, kids are seeing, I got a 75%, that's an A, or what, removing all of those confusing barriers and making sure that the only score that they really see that's average like that is the one that's in Infinite Campus.
Will they be able to tell what they need? This is what kids do, just FYI, I'm sure you know this. They look and they're like, oh my God, I need to get an 87 on this test to keep an A, or I need to get an 87.3 to keep an A. Will they still be able to understand how they need to perform in the next assessment to keep their grades where they want them? Because that's a big part of motivation for the kids.
I mean, in theory, it's all mathematical equations. So yes, it's probably going to be a little more complicated to do that. So we're just going to increase the rigor in their mathematical skills
Our
to do
kids are
that.
just about learning. They're not worried about just being just what do they have to do. They're about exceeding, Julia.
It's a more complicated equation.
So we're going to roll the existing EE, ME, all of that into these numbers. If it's a 1-to-1 kind of measure, then I would expect that most aren't going to get a 4. Is that a fair statement? Because that generally means you're going above your expected performance, right?
So a lot of our conversation this year was what does 4 mean? Because when we initially rolled it out, a lot of teachers saw it as the only way to get a 4 is to be above grade level and be a whole nother grade level above. And what we were looking at was we have very high achieving students who are doing fantastic on this standard, but maybe they can't do a high school standard, which we don't expect them to do right now.
Right.
And so we've done a lot at looking at what does a 4 mean in the class and how can we really make sure we're giving appropriate feedback. For example, in math, in the first year, to get an EE, you had to do a problem that was 1.5 pages long, and you're in 6th grade, and you're like, this is my first real math test that looks like this, and I have 2 pages of a problem. And so we've really worked with teachers, and part of our plan is to continue to next year to better define for each class what that looks like, that it doesn't have to be an entire grade level above. It means that you're applying it consistently. You're applying at a high level. In something like English, you're using more increased high vocabulary versus writing to a whole nother standard. You're writing the same essay, you're doing those same assignments to meet the standard, but yours is much more polished. Yours goes to that more advanced version of it, not you have to be a grade level above. Like when we originally started, we realized that wasn't working, and we've been pivoting, so.
Okay, because that's probably the most complaint I've heard from the standards-based is that
Yes.
this concept that EE means you're doing good and anything less than EE means you're not.
We received a lot of feedback that looked like that we spent a lot of time going, how can we tweak this to make it make sense? And the idea is we want high quality learning for all kids. So how can we do that in a way, and how can we represent to parents and let them know how their kids are doing? So.
Yep.
We also spent a lot of time talking about, in terms of instruction, you teach to the 4. You teach to that highest level of expectation, but you also recognize that that is taking it to a deeper level, and that students who are scoring at a 3 are meeting grade level standards, right? They're doing as a former English teacher, right? It's a nice, clean piece of writing. It's well organized. I can follow it. It has the depth that it needs. But then for a 4, wow, this has a level of sophistication that we definitely expose students to in their learning opportunities, but we know that every student may not quite get there.
Okay.
Well, and kind of piggybacking on what they said, I teach math, and so like when I teach math, I teach so every kid can get an A. Like I'm showing them all the skills and all the things to be able to get an A. But if they get a B, I'm cool with that, right?
Yep.
So this is kind of redefining that exceeding expectations to be like, well, this is the expectation, and most of you are going to get there, and it's okay if you're not quite getting there all the time. Like when we talk about A, B, C, D, right? So A's and B's are great, and that's what we want to see, and that's kind of how we want our middle school kids to really kind of think about these things.
Yeah, I think there's just going to be that in-house conversation between parents and students where it's like, hey, how come you don't have all A's? And we need to make sure that we're setting our parents' expectations correctly so that those can come back to our students as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. feel free to come to the board advisory and the task force meeting on Tuesday if you want to hear more conversations about it. All right, moving on to comprehensive literacy, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sarah Valter, who has been leading our comprehensive literacy assessment and the development of our plan as we go into next year.
Is this working now? Perfect. Over the past few years, we have engaged in a lot of practices to kind of unpack and roll out Senate Bill 681 and the provisions of that legislation. It is the legislation that encompasses reading success plans, letters training, a lot of the program adoptions that we have gone through. And the last piece of Senate Bill 681 is to develop a comprehensive literacy plan. So DESE issued several sets of directions and a comprehensive needs assessment that we've engaged in so that we could develop a comprehensive plan as a district. It is part of our Compass plan for 26-27. So one of the things, we've developed a literacy plan. It is its own plan because we need to share it with DESE and it needs to be part of the CSIP process. However, to make sure that the work really happens, it is kind of underneath the district compass that we've worked out. So the way the plan works, DESE has identified 6 different domains that they want us to address, and we are supposed to identify 2 of those domains to focus on. We established a task force, which I'll explain and kind of unpack in just a moment. But as we did the work, we identified that our 2 areas of priority are standards-based curriculum. Obviously, that aligns with a lot of the work that's currently going on. So that was kind of we definitely need to do this one. And then we allowed our committee to design or determine which of the other 5 categories we wanted to focus on. And so that group decided that intentional instruction, intervention, and enrichment should be the other focus area to begin with. So we've been engaged in this work since last summer. DESE issued step 2 of their directions last summer, along with a comprehensive needs assessment. We determined a collaborative team that includes teachers from every building, administrators, instructional coordinators, and reading interventionists. We made sure that our group is not just ELA teachers from the secondary levels. We wanted to make sure we had representatives of science and social studies as well. Based on work that we've already started doing and feedback we've gotten from those departments, we know there's a lot of literacy work that happens in high school and middle school outside of the ELA classroom. So we really broadened this group to make sure we included those individuals as well. We also invited special educators from a couple of buildings to be part of this decision-making process. So we began meeting in early December. We narrowed down our domains first, so that's where you saw the standards-based instruction and the intentional instruction, intervention, and enrichment. And then we held subsequent meetings. Teachers on the panel or in the committee filled out the needs assessment that was provided by DESE in those 2 domains. And we spent our work time identifying what does that look like at K-5, 6-8, and 9-12. And then synthesized all of that feedback, all of that information to determine 2 specific goals that we want to work on next year underneath the Compass plan. Our last meeting was a revision meeting, and then we talked a lot at that last meeting about a plan for implementation, because even though DESE wants us to just have a plan in place, we really feel strongly that it has to be something we fully implement and that we have a plan for carrying it out during the 26-27 school year. We've also taken the plan as a draft to the Teaching and Learning Board Advisory to get the parent and community feedback on the draft of the plan that we have so far. So what we've done is we've identified 2 goals, 1 per domain. So underneath the standards-based curriculum goal, it actually kind of arrives at a perfect time for us. We are heading into curriculum writing in ELA this summer, or English, and reading and writing in the primary grades. So one of our goals, we have clearly identified what our priority standards are at each grade level in reading and in writing. But as part of our comprehensive literacy plan, we've recognized that the need is to really have a vertical progression of skills. So it's clearly mapped out that this is what is expected in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. While we have those standards already lined out, what we don't have is a comprehensive document that shares with teachers. If I'm a 3rd grade teacher, here's what comes before me, here's what comes after me, so that I can build that bridge between the grade levels on either side of me. We're starting this year because it is our ELA revision year during curriculum camp with our English department and with the reading and writing work in the elementary grades. But we know that that work needs to expand to science and social studies as well. So once we have this kind of progression of this is exactly what we expect a ninth grader to do as a reader and as a writer, here's what that also looks like in your science class, in your social studies class, in your facts class across the board. So we know we've identified action steps and success indicators for each of the domains. The biggest success indicator for this is that we will have that vertical progression by the time the ELA curriculum process is done next summer. We also know that we need vertical time, especially in elementary, integrated into professional learning. So that's one of the things that we have planned out and mapped out for next year. And then we want to make sure that when we finalize that English curriculum, that we have a very clear skill progression and that we can really delineate between what a ninth grader and a 10th grader and an 11th grader should be able to do on the standards side. Our other domain is instruction, intervention, and enrichment. This one focuses a lot more on professional learning. One of the biggest goals is that we want to have a very common set of language across the board from K through 12 to understand those reading foundational skills. So even if you teach high school and all of your kids are very proficient readers, what does it mean to decode a word? What happens when you come to a word you don't know or you don't have reading fluency? So work that we're doing around this, we are currently have about 85% of our teachers who have completed letters training in volume 1, which is all the foundational skills. In elementary, that goes K through 5. We are, I've recruited the other 15% to be in a cohort next year. So we should be finished with volume 1 by the end of next year. Volume 2, we're sitting at about 65 or 70% of our teachers have finished volume 2. So it's a 2-volume, 2-year training process. We have a large cohort of teachers who will complete that next year. So within the next 2 to 3 years, all of our current staff should have completed letters in grades K through 5. DESE's also offering a training called Aspire for 6 through 12. So we're starting with a small cohort of interested secondary teachers next year to go through that literacy-specific training. So letters and Aspire are a big part of the work for this. We're also going to expand how that professional learning looks in middle and high school for literacy. We've done a lot of elementary work over the last few years. But again, not only in English, but also the content areas. What does good literacy instruction look like if you're teaching science or social studies? How do we leverage that content knowledge as well as making sure kids can read and write proficiently? And then what we're looking for here, a couple of different things. Number one, we want to make sure that teachers do have that common understanding and common set of language and a skill set to work with kids of all different reading abilities to make sure we're addressing needs. And then ultimately, we want to see this have a positive impact on the number of students who have reading success plans.
So I just had 2 questions. And I think you kind of hit it there at the end, that the reading success plans is one of your KPIs that you're going to watch to say,
Yes.
did this work or did this not work? Okay.
Yes.
And then the letters training, does that become part of our onboarding? Maybe that's a question for you, Dr. McKinney, or I don't know who.
We currently have it. So it is about 40 hours of outside of school time work plus 4 days of in-person training. So it's this fine balance of we don't want to pull out a first-year teacher for separate days. We're actually at the point now where when we hire teachers with experience in other districts, we're getting a lot of new teachers who already have the training just because it's being offered statewide and really nationwide in a lot of districts. So the way we currently have it is we're expecting teachers to complete it by the end of their 3rd year. What I'm doing is kind of targeting teachers who are at the end of their 1st year and making sure they know you have about 2 years to sign up for this. I think you're about ready for it. So we really do have a plan in place already. Most teachers who are new to the district are kind of signing up during that 2nd year. We also offer summer training for teachers who want to just not have that sub time and come in during the summer instead.
And is that out of building training by somebody outside of district, or do we have like a train the trainer type program where we can build in-house training staff?
So letters has to be done by a certified facilitator. Currently, that's me.
Okay,
So,
nice.
and then I have to do ongoing professional learning each year to keep that license.
Okay, thank you.
With the new legislation and our different comprehensive literacy plan, would you say, because from what I'm seeing, it seems like there's a much bigger population of kids that are now a part of the reading success plan, like it's capturing more kids. And my thought was I was just wondering kind of how if we've needed to do any more preparation to have like just a bigger volume of kids that we're serving in a different intervention level.
So we've been doing some work that actually isn't part of the comprehensive literacy plan. It's just the work that needed to happen this year. One of the things that we started after each round of iReady testing is I've been going in with each teacher team, every grade level, every building. We're talking about every kid with a reading success plan. What do they need? What's an appropriate goal? How are we communicating? How are we addressing those needs? So that's one way that we're already kind of working through that. Who needs a plan? Why do they have a plan piece? Our goal with that vertical progression is to pair it with resources as well. So if we have a second grader who's struggling with decoding words that are at a second grade level, the teacher would have a clear toolkit of what to do. We have summer professional learning geared toward those things. So for 6 through 12, I'm offering summer training on fluency. That seems to be an area of reading that secondary teachers aren't familiar with and has a lot of leverage for moving and helping kids. So we have that in place. And then we've also changed our 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th transition process a little bit, which I'm really excited about. We have our middle school reading specialists coming to our 5th grade PLCs, so that when we talk about those students who need a reading success plan and are transitioning to middle school, we've already kind of got those reading specialists in the space, hearing about the kids, able to communicate with the 6th grade teachers. And then Kelsey, who's our high school reading interventionist, is going to do the same for 8th grade.
So we have Aspire and Letters. Letters is 2 years. How long does it take to train for Aspire?
Aspire is 1 year. It's also about 40 hours of independent work. It's online modules, so it kind of varies depending on, it's geared toward if you're a science teacher, if you're a social studies teacher. Some modules are common across the content, some are specific to different departments. So it's about 40 hours of online modules outside of school time, and then it's 4 days at Ed Plus for training. They don't do a facilitator model. Missouri is the only state who's decided to actually have in-person days for Aspire. The way the company rolled out the program, it's not designed to be an in-person and online module. Currently in Missouri, you can only get the Aspire training by going to your RPDC.
So that's a big difference between the two.
It is.
And then it's more focused towards the science and history or social studies.
Yes.
That's what I was listening for, because history is so hard in high school.
Yes.
There's so much to read.
Yes.
Yeah.
And knowing that, because it is 4 days out of the classroom, and it's a big thing to take on for teachers to do those 40 hours. We've also I've been going every time a vertical or horizontal secondary team meets this year. I've been going with them for 45 minutes to an hour to do literacy-specific work that they can take back to their departments. So we've kind of started embedding what we can into that learning. Also, the last professional learning day we did literacy-specific work with every department at the high school to start building those foundations.
Well, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you will see that comprehensive literacy plan coming to you at the May board meeting. So if you want to start reading.
All right, well, thank you, good evening. This evening, Human Resources also will focus on just a few of our topics. Our compass always focuses on retention, recruitment, and service to staff. And the 3 items we're going to present to you this evening are focused on the service aspect and the retention aspect. The first compass goal has to do with our medical fund, and really this is a preview for you. We are going to do a deep dive into this at the July workshop, but you can see that the compass goal is to correct the $1.6 million deficit in the medical fund, which is difficult. We've done numerous things in past years to help replenish the medical fund. We've changed to generic pharmacy, which is netted about $1 million, still not enough. The board has voted last year to increase the district's contributions to the medical fund. Again, still not enough. And this goes back to skyrocketing healthcare costs. If you would look back at our reserve account before COVID-19, we had a $3 million reserve in our medical fund. And then after COVID-19, and this is not a Lindbergh problem, this is an industry problem, this is every employer across the United States, it's every district. In fact, in July, we'll talk about, just to put this in perspective, how Lindbergh's actually in fairly good shape compared to some of our peers and neighbors. And so what you see on the slide are really milestones about our timeline for rolling out our correction plan. We're currently in development with our broker, who is super innovative and creative. He brought to us generic drugs, for instance, which has been really a great move. He's brought to us the idea of a clinic in the future that will also be more of a longer-term investment, but really will pay dividends in the long term. So those ideas are in discussion at this point. In July, the experts, and then Chris Briley, our broker, and I will bring forward several of these ideas. At that point, we will discuss these with Dr. Lake and the cabinet. We'll present those, take any questions you might have about those ideas, and then we'll get our big committee together in August, which is about 40 people, represents all employee groups and represents retirees. Every group that of our membership will be represented on that committee. And we'll talk about the possibilities for correcting this and what is the most palatable. Hopefully we'll have several options, build some really build consensus around a single plan, and then present that plan, the committee's recommendation, back to the board at the October board meeting. Once that is, if all goes to plan, agreed upon, then that will give us time to have this rolled out and to the staff by the January enrollment and plan year. As far as communication to staff, throughout this time, we'll be communicating with the larger staff, but ways that we've done that in the past is through screencasts, which talk about what changes look like, how they'll impact you and your family, various scenarios. But this year, we also will look to do some in-person discussions at staff meetings, and so that'll be through either Ann and myself traveling. It'll also be through our committee members presenting at staff meetings. So there will be ample lines of communication out to all of our employee groups about these needed changes. This is not fun stuff, but we can correct this. And as I mentioned, relatively speaking, Lindbergh is in better shape than many. And we look to hopefully make a dent, correct this. We hope this is enough. So each time that we've corrected a deficit, it seems like we've turned around and found more deficit. So we'll do our best. Any questions about that? Again, this will be a very much more in-depth presentation in July. Any questions about insurance? Okay, if not, let's talk about some fun things. The other two items we're here to talk about tonight are wellness and safety. And to speak about our great, incredible wellness program, which is an investment in helping with that deficit I talked about. You start with wellness, and that pays dividends in the long run. To talk about that tonight is Dr. Ali Mack and her team, and she'll introduce them.
Just hold it. There. Okay. So like Brian said, we don't always get to talk about fun items, but these items that we're speaking about with you today are definitely something that we're very passionate about and a little more fun. So HR can be fun, despite what some people might think. So just this right here is one of our Compass goals for 26-27 that I just wanted to highlight. So really continuing our efforts to make sure that we're providing the same opportunities for our certified and classified staff is making sure that they have opportunities for the same learning, the same connection through initiatives like the Support Staff Leadership Academy. We've already seen a lot of success with our classified staff members. There's been a lot of internal movement within the academy. So we've had a custodian move to an admin assistant role. We've had a custodian interview and land a head custodian role. We've had a lot of teaching assistants this hiring season go around interviewing for teaching roles. And so we just want to continue to identify areas where we can grow and support our support staff. So one of them is providing an in-person orientation for all of our staff. So historically, we've always provided that in-person orientation for our certified staff. I remember when I started
12, 13 years ago in Lindbergh, and I remember sitting at a table with Jillian Holmes and Allison Moss and trying to think of a fun fact we were going to share. And I was in my green Lindbergh polo and khaki pants and sitting on that stage. And it was just, it was an exciting time. And with our support staff, it's like they get a new job, they're very excited, they show up to a building, they don't know anybody, and you're just, bam, thrown right into it. So we want to build on that, and we really want to bridge that gap. And so this in-person orientation will kind of span across all departments. We'll talk about things like big picture items, like what are our policies and handbooks and our district values, and then, day-to-day things like how do you clock in? How much sick time do you get? Insurance? How do you access your device? So important things that come up throughout the year that we're always answering these questions on the phone. So this is just something we're really excited about, and just something that we're going to start for this next school year. And so if you go to the next slide, we recognize, in human resources, it's not just about onboarding the staff, but it's about what do we do when we get our staff? How do we retain our staff? And so that's where the wellness program really comes in. So I have these amazing people here today with me to kind of talk about some initiatives they do within their building, but just some kind of background and some things that we've done this past couple school years since I've been in this role. So we strategically kind of reallocated our funds and kind of organize the wellness advocates so they can better serve all of our district, making sure that we are reaching support staff, we're reaching support service center, we're reaching every employee group within this wellness within our district. And so when we kind of reallocated the wellness advocates, it kind of opened up some funding for some things that we're really passionate about. So this past year, we've looked at kind of all of our Zindens or lactation spaces and just put money toward that and made sure that every building, with the help of construction, has that designated space for our employees. We have really tried to bridge the gap between the wellness advocate and the administrator. So every year they sit down and they fill out what we call a wellness advocate scorecard. It's like a report card, but, and they just talk about what are your wellness goals for your building, what kinds of things is our staff passionate about, what kind of challenges are we facing, and how can I help you with this. And then we've done a lot of things at professional learning days. So we offer Pilates classes. We've brought in registered dietitians. We have had mindfulness meditation. We've had bar, Zumba, yoga, you name it. We've offered that during the day at PL sessions, and we've gotten a really overwhelming positive response about that. And then we're just going to continue with, try to dream big and continue with our community events. So we have our Green and Gold Gallop next Sunday, April 26th. Right now, we have over about 200 people signed up to run, walk, jog, whatever floats your boat. But we are really excited. This is an all hands on deck. We have a lot of our students that help participate. So the LHS Student Council, they're going to do a lemonade stand. The pep band is going to send off the runners. Our cheerleaders and dance team is going to lead us in like a little stretch before they run. They kind of help guide the runners along the race. Our cross-country runners run the race. I think last year we had a student that finished in like 15 minutes and lapped everybody. So, we're just excited about our impact, and just we feel like we're really headed in the right direction. Anne is here today to kind of share some specific numbers and some celebrations that we have with you guys.
Okay, so we do have a few things to talk about as far as celebrations and wins. But the first one that we're going to talk about is our enrollment in the program itself. We currently have 59% of our employees enrolled in our wellbeing program. The industry standard is 37%. So we do have employees who are very interested, and they're utilizing the program. They're utilizing the things within their building that the advocates here have brought to them to improve their health and work with their advocates. So we're very happy with the enrollment. We're still working on improving that number, and the advocates are very invested in that. So we'll continue to work at that, but we are pretty happy with that number. The other thing that we have to celebrate is that our EAP program, of the cases that have gone to our EAP, that's 97% of those cases have been resolved within the EAP program. They haven't gone to our medical costs and have been resolved within that program, which translates to about $57,000 saved within our medical program, avoiding medical costs. So to us, that's another big win. And we have some amazing advocates in our buildings. We have enjoyed working with them a lot, and they have some great initiatives within their buildings. One of the things that we're improving upon this year is that one of those communication pieces that Brian was talking about with regard to benefits and communicating benefits within the building is that we're going to educate our advocates on some of our benefit offerings so that they can go into the buildings too and deliver those messages and become a resource to their building with regard to benefits, instead of just having one person that is available to get that message out. We have then a whole team of people, which is great and very much of a help to me. So I am very much invested in that. I know that they are, and the resource within their building, their employees, they want to become that resource. So we do have three amazing advocates with us today. We have Amy Puleo, she's from Crestwood. We have from Sappington, Beth Basler from Crestwood, and then Colleen Besancina is from Concord, and she's gonna begin giving you some things about her building that she's introduced and some exciting initiatives.
All right. Hi, as she said, I'm Colleen Besancini. I am a third grade teacher at Concord. A few things that I've loved implementing at Concord is we do Wellness Wednesdays. And so every other Wednesday I do like a walk and talk with the staff, and they can join, and we walk down Twilight. So if you see a group of teachers, just slow down a little bit. But we do love that. And then on the other Wednesdays, I try to incorporate some type of like mindful or well-being, physical or mental type of activity, which could be, I have some like healthy snacks that I put around the school and then call it like a healthy scavenger hunt. So they have to go around and find some fun treats. Or I had Pick-a-Pop, where they had like ghost suckers with a colored thing on the bottom, and each one they picked was a different healthy snack or some water bottles, different little treats. And then we have some other like bingo challenges. I did heart health for February, some winter wellness challenges in the winter, and then right now I'm doing a spring cleaning one for April. And another huge initiative that has been awesome is a Concord Fitness Club. So we have like a little group on Facebook, and it's like a challenge to post 5 out of 7 days that you did a workout, and there's some incentives that go with it to get some extra little prizes and workout passes to wear throughout the week. So yeah, my staff's been really supportive and loving all the things we do, so I've had a great time with them. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Beth Basler, and I am the nurse at Crestwood Elementary. Before becoming a school nurse, I was a family nurse practitioner for 28 years. And I also am a spin instructor and a boot camp instructor at Sunset Hills Community Center. So anybody want to come? We got classes. So health is my gig. Like, I love this position. I just took it this year. On a side note, I worked at the St. Charles School District Health Clinic as a nurse practitioner. That was a really cool concept. So just down the road, it worked well for their employees. Also read an article today, a medical article on the VA clinic, and they looked at a couple years of their veterans on Ozempic, and the decrease in cost, not saying everybody needs to go on Ozempic, but just keeping the weight loss and the health of the veterans, decreasing in cholesterol meds, decrease in obesity, decrease in heart attacks, decrease. So what that tells me is if we keep everyone healthy here, we're going to have a decrease in our medical costs. And that's why it's so important to me and my background of being a nurse practitioner is just keeping these people healthy. So this year, I'm new in my role. I started a walk club. We walk and we talk. The other day, we talked about sugar intake and how to decrease our sugar intake. We talked about healthy recipes. I usually bring up like something to talk about while we're walking. We did our first turkey trot. We did the Sunset Hills Community Turkey Trot. It was a beautiful morning. That was a fun event. I post our monthly news handouts on a Health Hub and I usually include some extra stuff in that. I also send out a monthly email. I consider it kind of my blog, and I'm including a healthy recipe every month. Fast and easy, I'm big on overnight oats or some sort of recipe that increases your protein intake, which we know is important. Ask Megan. Megan and I work out together, so we get lectured a lot on things.
I'm already sore from this morning.
Yes. My theme this year has been Patty Corum came and talked to us support staff people, and I absolutely loved her. Allie knows that. And she did 10 steps on taking care of ourselves, which is so important because if we don't take care of ourselves, then that really comes upon our job, our family, being a spouse and taking care of our kids. It's so important. So she did 10 steps. So every month I talk about one of her steps and just elaborate on that as well. I also, with being a nurse practitioner, have brought a lot in about screenings, breast cancer, colon cancer, and things, and symptoms of diabetes, maybe just a little more on the health aspect for my staff. But I love the job.
Hello, I'm Amy Palayo, and I'm at Sappington Elementary. I'm a reading specialist, and Beth, you're invited to come and do a spin class with us at Sappington.
Got it.
And get us into shape. So I'm excited to be here because I think it was about 5 years ago I got to present about well-being when we first had advocates. So it's just neat to see how things have changed since before we started from COVID. And I feel like Lindbergh is on it, and we are definitely going in the right direction with well-being. So at Sappington, we've had an exciting year. I post all of the go-to things for the month close to the teachers' mailboxes with recipes, sending them emails, tons of communication. I always have an open door policy. There's teachers that come to me all the time and ask, how do I get my points for my $100? And my goal to myself is to go to 3 teachers that have never gotten their 100 points every year and try to get those 3 new teachers to get there and get on the Navigate site that have never been on Navigate. And they realize it's not that hard once they start. They're like, well, this is not that bad. And I go to the doctor once a year and get my physical, and I get mammograms, and I do this. So I feel like just reaching out to some of those teachers that are scared just to get on that and think it's gonna be a lot of work, and they realize it's really not. So that was kind of like my challenge since I've been in this position for a few years. And then I started a Facebook page just for wellness challenges and getting communication out, because a lot of people are on that and just easier for them to, either get on their phones or while they're working out and they can see it, or exercise. I started small. We had like a candy bowl in our office when you walked in, and I said, let's try to make some, small changes for making a big difference. So I went out and just bought a fruit bowl, and now we have a fruit tray bowl in our office, and everybody sees, the kids even see it, that there's apples, oranges, and my wonderful secretary helps me fill that. So just those little changes and seeing the healthy things around the building is wonderful. And then I try to do like lots of small challenges, but one of our big challenges this year, my challenge to myself was to not go so like workout-ish and motivate them, which we do a lot of that stuff, but to also do more mental well-being and self-care that way. So I did like a little February wellness challenge, and I try to put things like, put a joke up on the board for your class, and I tried to incorporate our students more with us as with our teachers, since I was a 3rd grade teacher. And I feel like, just incorporating them, because they help us so much and they do so much. You could be sitting there doing squats with them in class, and it's a good energy break for them as well. So they love that. Like, it was a new type of challenge, and they really read that. And they got to have lots of great raffles at the end. They got weighted vests, and all the things posted up there that everybody likes, all the water bottles that are popular. I continued my gratitude board. It's in our lounge, and I just try to keep that updated and fresh to everybody to put their appreciations and positive notes about each other in the lounge, and everybody sees it, and just that's, something that everybody, can go to, and it's visible. And then lastly, I'm continuing our plant swap. It has really added a lot of like greenery and calm space into our classrooms, and I feel like the kids are really liking it because they're watering the plants, and it's kind of brought lots of culture because we're all changing and swapping out plants and talking about it, and just lots of fun things. So I just feel like I've been in the district for 20 years now, and this wasn't around when I started, and I feel like the well-being of Lindbergh has been very impactful. And I have 4 children that go, 3 that attend, 4, 1 coming, and I feel like it's great for everybody all around. So kudos to everybody that puts into all their work into well-being.
Any questions before we move on to our final topic?
So I have a question about the very first thing that you spoke about with the in-person training for support staff. I think that's wonderful. I'm excited to hear about it. If there are current employees that maybe are newer, have you guys thought about whether they can opt into the training?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we just started back our substitute orientations, and we offer it for new hires, but also people that have been with us for even 10, 15 years. Our first orientation was, I believe, in January, and we had about like 50 people because we had so many people come. So it's definitely something that we would open up to support staff if they wish to join. Great question.
And with teachers, it's easy to get everyone at the beginning of a school year, but we hire classified people 12 months a year. So we're doing this once a quarter, and then so you might have been hired on November 1st, but you're gonna come to the December orientation, because we can't do it every single day of the year. So it's a little more complex with classified than it is with teachers, because they're on a different cycle.
I want to first say thank you for doing this in your buildings. I am a wellness advocate as well in the building where I teach, so I know the work that you put into it, and I know like the emails that you send out, and you feel like you're bombarding your staff with like all kinds of requests and stuff like that. But I know it's not going unnoticed, so I think everything you're doing is awesome. So thank you for that. I did have a question about the well-being portal. You said the enrollment is 59%. Is that a portal that we maintain, or is that an outside source? Tell me a little more about that.
So Navigate is who kind of organizes our portal, and we meet with them monthly, and they kind of go over what our scorecard is for the month. So just this past, we met with them today actually, and they said just this past quarter we've had 16 new people enroll, but we've had 239 people, I believe, that have visited the site just within the last couple of weeks. And so they look at how many times people are logging in, how many times people are rejoining, but we kind of manage like if you get a physical, how many points you get. If you get a mammogram, how many points you get. So we kind of put more work into it on the front end, so hopefully it helps our medical fund on the back end.
So staff is logging in and
We're logging their
documenting
points.
what they're doing and getting points for what they're doing.
Right, so if they log in and if they get their 100 points, you get $100, so you can get $100 to Amazon, Sephora, really anywhere. It's just a free gift card, so.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you, team.
All right, we are going to make a pivot. So we're pushing on time here. It's 5 o'clock, so we're gonna jump to Joelle. And then if there's time, Jason, we'll have you wrap us up before we go into exec session. I think with exec session, we can probably go in about 5:45 and still be okay to be back out here by 6:30, okay? But we need to do the budget. So you will not see Beth or Dominic tonight. So their slides will be, their slides will be in the Friday packet, so.
Well, I feel like we could maybe skip, except on the expenditure side, we could skip my budget report outlook right now, because we've been talking so much about budget and finance and revenue. I mean, for the last 6 months, I know it's like, let's just get this legislative session over and move on. So I think any of you could probably go through this and do the presentation. So I hope that's a good thing. So I do want to say again that this assumptions are as of today, because everything changes every day in school finance. This is, of course, presented prior to the 26th legislative session and the end of the school year, blah, blah, blah. So things will change, and as they do change, that's why we have a budget. We adopt our budget late in June so that we can get as much good information as we can. So we'll have that. But after the budget is adopted, we will bring amendments if needed. So here's the timeline. You know, we have this workshop each spring. We adopt in late June. We bring monthly review of budget to the Finance Committee and then to the board, amendments as needed. We have done a good job, I think, in the past year or two, using the decision-making matrix, you know, as expenditure requests come up. People have to do homework, a little bit of homework before they bring it to us and before we bring it to you to see how it ties to Compass goals. And I think that's been working out well. And we really haven't had that many amendments, I don't think, in this past year. We've been keeping things under control. Budget development goals, again, we always have our budget meeting outlook. At the same time, we talk about compass goals because, of course, they tie together. But number one on the budget is fiscal responsibility and transparency. Brian talked a little bit about HR and our main goal of offering competitive wages, salaries, and benefits package across the board. Reasonable class sizes, enrollment changes, always operational efficiency. I don't ever think there's a time when we don't talk about how can we become better at this. When somebody leaves or when a program changes, we look at how we can streamline it. And then fund balance and reserves are also very important. So next slide is when we, our goal annually for our budget is, of course, balanced. When I say balanced, I mean when we look at new revenue for the year and new expenditures for the year, and we'd like, those to be equal. Our goal, of course, is our certified staff and student-focused. And on top of that, I would have to say in reassessment years, our goal is to add a little bit of fund balance. I mean, that's hard to do in a non-reassessment year because there's limited funds. But if we could do something and end up at the end of the year with a little bit more dollars in fund balance, that is always on our mind. But at a minimum, we need to make sure the budget is balanced. This is a slide, the next one, that I share with the Finance Committee on a monthly basis. It's the operating fund balance and it's a 3-year trend. And if you look right now where the orange line is, I know it's still March financials we're looking
Hey,
at.
Joel, can we just pause for a sec?
Yep.
Let's talk about the definition of this balanced budget compared to other years' definition of balanced budget. This is as tight, what I would say, a balanced budget that we've had in my 8 years here. When you look at Prop C money that's been reduced, when you look at the state funding formula not being fully funded, going into next year, there's just there's very little new money. And so just know that when we say balanced, usually when we say balanced, there's a little bit of cushion in there. This one has that, it's like as tight as we could get this one. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. And we're going to talk more about that, especially as we go into next school year with everything that's happening in Jefferson City. It's going to be really important that our community understand the impact of some decisions that are being made in Jeff City and how they are going to impact our overall philosophy, which has been to be as lean and spend as much of our tax dollars on our students that are presently here for their experiences and not necessarily to be a bank, be responsible in our reserves and have money for rainy days. And we're building those back and we purposely spent those down. But just know that there are things that are happening there that could really change our financial strategy overall. And so I just want to make sure we put that out there, and not that a ton of people watch this workshop, but we want to at least be on record in the public to say, if things continue to change, we may have to change how we approach our financial strategy as well. So, all right, Joelle.
Thank you for that. This chart does show, again, how our fund balance looks over the course of the year. And, we get one big paycheck a year. Yeah, sometimes it's paid on time. No, I'm just joking. No, it hasn't been paid on time. And we did, I'll have to say a quick side note is, at the Glasgow, St. Louis, MOASBO meeting, they had St. Louis County there, which was some 2 unknowns. Really is a change in the guard, I guess, at St. Louis County. Our collector and assessor will both be new next year. And so just meeting with some St. Louis County folks on permits and other things, they're just really kind of rotating through a new staff. The people that presented today really didn't have any answers to any questions or provide any data. So it's all avenues, as I'm saying, state, local, and federal. So right now, we're the orange and we're looking good. So the next slide, it just talks, I'm not going to go over this in too deep, but why we need reserve funds. We do have a policy, and you guys can look at that. We've talked about this over and over, so you can go to the next slide, Colin. Okay, am I on the right? Okay, revenue estimates. Next slide. This is a visual of how our revenue flows. Again, it's the opposite of the fund balance, if you want to notice that. We get our revenue really at one time in the year. The rest of the year, it's pretty darn flat. So the peak you see at the end of the school year in May and June is the unique thing with St. Louis County where they release the protested taxes on the books, that friendly lawsuit, that at the end of the year they're required to release those protested taxes to schools, and then as they're settled with the State Tax Commission, we have to pay those back to St. Louis County. So that's what that little blip is there in May and June. The next slide just shows revenue by source, nothing new here. We know local revenue is our biggest source of revenue. Next slide, just some historical information, consumer price index, which is inflation, which is very important to us in our local revenue because how much we can grow in a year on revenue is based on is CPI, which is the inflation rate in December. This is what DESE and the State Auditor Office uses. There's 5 years data here. As you can see, when you look back to 21, that was a 7%. That was a big inflation year. That was the highest I've seen back all the way 30 years. So we're back more to a norm. So we'll see what our next reassessment looks like. Next slide is just talking about why CPI matters, the hold harmless agreement with Missouri Hancock amendment that says we're not going to gouge our taxpayers. If their assessment goes up on an average of 15%, we're only going to raise our revenue by CPI. Next slide shows that a little bit more. It shows like if assessed valuation goes up, then the tax rate goes down. And that's how we ended up really over the course of this many years being at a 275 minimum levy in the state. And we did talk about that when we went to Jeff City, that we've done our due diligence and we've rolled our levy back. I mean, we did an operating levy after 2008, put that, taxpayers voted for that, and we've rolled it back and rolled it back and rolled it back as AV has increased over all these years. So we have not cheated anybody on that. We followed the rules, and that's why our levy is at 275. Agricultural is really close to 275, and commercial is not too far. Next slide. This is tiny numbers, so you can look at it when it's not on the screen. This is just a summary of how that has worked out over the past, I guess this is 6 years, 7 years, whatever I have on here. The bottom part is, the red number is the number that we have to go by because it's the lower of CPI or actual growth. So when looking at this next year as a non-reassessment year, you can look back at the last 3 non-reassessment years and you can see that they were very low numbers as far as AV growth. The one there that's in 2022 was that high inflation year where CPI was 7%. That's not the norm. It hasn't been the norm for 30 years. But that year, non-reassessment year growth was 2.72%. So when we're looking at growth for next year, Dr. Lake and I met and we're looking at a 1% is what we're gonna predict. We won't get that data until July. We won't get the final numbers until September, but that's what we're using for our revenue predictions. Next slide. The other one that's important on revenue predictions for local is your new construction and personal property. This one is not subject currently to the Hancock amendment, which means you don't have to roll it back. That is one of the things that's sitting on the table right now, waiting to be decided in the next 5 weeks. This is a history of our new construction, which means it's property that was substantially changed over the prior year or new. Our area is pretty much built out. I always use the Bass Pro Shop as an example of it went from dilapidated Toys R Us to the Bass Pro Shop, and that was more of a new construction. So what we did for predicting revenue for next year is we looked at a 3-year average in each category, and that money is new money because we don't roll it back. So it's always something that we can count on, at least for now. Next slide. Dr. Lake talked about state a lot, so I'm not gonna go through that. I did put some hard numbers on here just because I want others to know what numbers we used. It's somewhere where everybody can see it, so they don't have to guess what numbers I used in my predictions. But state funding, abysmal, nothing right now. Maybe that will change. We've seen in the past many years I've been in school businesses, I know they have to balance their budget, so their governor's negative, 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 and then all of a sudden in August, he says, okay, I'll change it. But I know the winds are changing as for politics at the state level. We're not anticipating any new revenue in that area, which is a first time ever that I've been at Lundberg for 9 years. Local prop taxes, I've went through how our predictions are. I've just documented them on here, what we're doing. Of course, the big question mark is senior tax credit. As you know, last year when St. Louis County estimated for that data for us, they said 500,000 for the, to grow to 5 million over the next 10 years, and then we were hit with 1.3. That question was asked today of the St. Louis County folks, and they're like, we have no idea what's gonna happen with that. It's like, thanks, why did we come to this meeting? Okay. But we're putting 500,000. I don't know what else to put, and that will be, when they send us the letter about what it is, that's when we'll know. And then, of course, other legislation, in the next 5 weeks could impact this outlook. That's the revenue picture.
And we just need to just say it. Like I said, not a ton of people watch this, but what Joelle keeps referring to is, she made reference to the 275. Well, there is legislation that Joelle and Julia went and testified against this legislation because it moves the 275 state minimum levy to 220. And so basically the way this is proposed is that our residential levy is actually at 229. And if this passes in that first year, they'll roll us to 275 and that will become our new operating levy. And from there, we will be subject to Hancock again, where we roll down. And in that first year of roll down from 275 down, we're projecting a $1.5 to $2 million loss of revenue just right there by changing that. And so what has happened and what has benefited our taxpayers has been that we have not raised taxes, and we have a strategy probably not to raise our taxes above 275, because what we get is if we roll down below 275, if we roll down and it's 8, let's just use 10 cents, then we get that assessed evaluation. That's where we've been able to generate a little more revenue, and then we roll it up to the 275. Well, it's either you generate that little bit of revenue below 275, or we're gonna have to, you potentially will have to go, or we'll have to go to the community and say, we're at 275, we may need to push that up to $3.10 or $3.05, whatever that is, to continue to be able to operate with the programs and continue to give modest salary increases that we need to do. So there's a lot, and she keeps referencing Jeff City. That one is a big one for our community to understand and be aware of. I know some of our parents that are heavily involved in the district have reached out to people in Jeff City as well. I know we've had some teachers and other folks reach out as well, because there's another St. Louis County School District that the two of us would be impacted, quite a bit. So there are other 275 districts around the state, but that's typically because that's where they've set their levy, and they don't really fluctuate a whole lot off of that 275 to where we do. So,
for those that missed it, the Senate passed HJR 173 last night, which is the income tax rollback. There's some changes, but it happened in the wee hours of the night, so.
That is like the third thing on my list that I'm concerned. It's
one more
concerning,
hit.
it is, it's just, but that's a big change in our state. But for us locally right now, we're not spending our energy on that one right now. Our association has taken the stance that there's other people in that fight, around the state, other organizations besides school administrators and school personnel folks. So they're doing that, but that's just one more thing and I'll go on record here. I lived that life. I came from the state of Kansas, and in 2013, 14-ish, Governor Brownback did the same thing in the state of Kansas. They did away with their income tax. They repealed it 4 or 5 years later because basically the state became bankrupt. So not saying that's going to happen here, but I have lived that experience where a state had income tax, tried to replace it with other things, and it went the other way. I don't know enough about this proposal, what that does, like I did with the Kansas one, so I'm not gonna speak to saying that this one will do that for sure. I'm just saying I have lived a life, where, the state did away with state income tax and it was repealed fairly quickly, so.
Doom and gloom. That's the moral of the story.
We're gonna try not to be doom and gloom.
I don't want to be doom and gloom.
And it's not doom and gloom. And here's the thing, it is doom and gloom, but what it's gonna happen is, like I said, we have a very good financial strategy to be minimalist with what our taxpayers give us and keep that tax rate very low. All of these changes is gonna require, and I do believe there is a philosophy from some, and I'm saying some, in Jeff City that is, okay, that's fine. Missouri's always been a big local control state, but the philosophy is really going to, well, that's fine. If we make this change and you say you're gonna have to go to your community to increase revenue or have a levy increase, they're of the mindset, okay, it's up to your individual community to do that. And there are people, and I think one of the people, Julia, from that committee, and Joelle, when you testified, that was kind of their approach was, okay, I'm gonna make this change because we're gonna save some taxpayer dollars, and then it's up to each local community then to increase that again if they wanna do it locally. And so I think that is, the mindset is, we've always been heavily local, and now the state's almost getting to the point where they're like, it's all gonna be local. I mean, it's like whatever it is that your local community is gonna support is the way I feel right now. And that's just my 2 cents of reading tea leaves and conversations I'm having in Jeff City, so.
That's the revenue story. Thank you for that additional information, because it is a lot to talk about. The next slide is expenditure estimates. So on a non-reassessment year, again, we're trying to keep our new expenditures lower with minimal adds. You can go to the next slide, Colin. So, of course, our biggest expenditure is wages and benefits, and so we're starting to look at certified staff salary schedule. We take our salary schedule, and we do have, you probably don't remember off the top of your head how many retirees or exits we've had, but we do have attrition in that, so it's not an add to the budget as far as the revenue side, but it's a reduction in expenditures, which is always a good thing. And so when we build our salary schedule, we take out the people that are leaving and put in the people that are entering. Our folks are entering at a little bit higher rate than they had entered in the past. We've kind of removed that cap of the number of years. So it's not as big of an attrition number, but still is attrition on that side. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the reductions in elementary, though it's based on enrollment. I know this is a surprise. I didn't say it to you, but that is the top thing is, and you're probably gonna say, what? 3 reductions in elementary teachers. Oh. But it's enrollment based.
So based on enrollment, just to be quick about this, elementary enrollment is such that we need 3 fewer teachers if school were to start tomorrow. And that doesn't mean anyone's been let go. There's no RIF in this situation. We just are able to not replace retiring teachers to make this happen. So we have the number of teachers that we need, so no one's in danger of again, being laid off or anything. But we are going to be, if school started tomorrow, down 3 teachers, which is good for the budget.
And I would just say this, overall enrollment since COVID has been very minimal. I mean, we've grown 20, we've grown 30, I think even one year, like this upcoming year, we're kind of stagnant, almost the same. And to be honest with you, the way the financial picture is right now, not having a lot of growth right now because we are fairly locally funded, as where most of our dollars come from right now, is not, we're a nice size. 7,200 is a nice size district that can offer anything to any kid and provide an amazing education. So we just really haven't seen that growth. And as we've talked about, we are becoming more of a second home community. We still have starter homes in our community, don't get me wrong, but the price of property in our school district is extremely high.
So
13 retirements.
13, there you go. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you had that. And I know Brian keeps up a lot with ongoing until August, we'll keep looking at our enrollment and our staffing, and so he does a good job with that. The next one is leave the same slide up there. I'll go back. STEM coordinator, that really is gonna be repurposed. You'll see it later as an ad. Well, it's a little bit down further as an ad. That was the central office position, STEM coordinator, and we're gonna repurpose that position to the Farmers Club position, the new program. So those interviews are going on right now, and that person will start in July. So it's an in and out. We're balancing the budget by repurposing dollars, which is what we've been good at doing in this district. The next ones that are additions are really based on, again, enrollment. You know, ELL enrollment is up in the buildings, and counseling, Tara's been part of that, working with the number of counselors we need. High school, that's a tough one. I don't ever understand it. I just write down what they tell me, but 7 sections made up of all kinds of little bitty numbers.
Maybe Dr. Cochran, he's sitting in the back there, maybe he can come up here and explain the 1.3 ad.
It's a 0.25 real estate teacher, I don't know, whatever, all kinds of things. But they do a lot of work to come up with that. So that's 7 sections with 1.33 FTE. And then the Farmers Club, I said, which was an exchange for the STEM coordinator.
I do think, though, Joelle, it's important that that Farmers Club instructor is coming out of what we call our back pocket. Just so when we were in that enrollment growth time, and we always budgeted, at one point, we were budgeting 5 teachers in our back pocket for sections that pop right before school starts, or, you know, we tip over because of our matrix. So last few years, we've been doing 3. This year, since those 3 are already in our budget every year, we're only gonna do 2 because of our enrollment. And so that one that's already in the budget is actually the on-site educator's position. It was already in there. And then our manager is being filled with the STEM coordinator position. We're repurposing that. So really, it's kind of a staffing to staff the Farmers Club is a revenue neutral staff. So we're excited about being able to do that.
Yeah, reducing expenditures is just as good as increasing revenue. So that's, when you can't get the revenue, that's the way you gotta go. And so also, as far as the certified side here, we're reducing a teacher's assistant at Sparing, but that is really rolling into the ELL position as well. So it's not dollar for dollar, but it's really close. So a lot of these are exchanges with really no real hard ads. So if anybody has any questions on this slide.
And if we don't have any sections tip over, we actually could cover Dr. Cochran's 1.3 with our 2.0 of FTE back pocket.
There you go. I wouldn't hold your breath. Yeah. We'll see what August looks like. The next slide. The biggest thing, of course, that we look at every year is, you know, that the agreement, negotiations and agreement with NEA and other employee groups. So this is year 2 of a 2-year agreement. I purposely kept the strike through in there because I wanted everybody to remember what last year was. We had planned, you know, a larger number last year, which was a reassessment year. And then this year was the 3%, which the 3% is the step and the base increase. And so that's across the board. The total cost of just the step and base increase, and then you have to add to that the FICA and retirement that also goes up when you increase wages. That's 2.4 million of our budget next year. So just the salary schedule changes. So that's where our money is with people.
That's all employee groups.
Yep, all employee groups.
Yes,
Yep.
that's all, that's for everybody to
Everybody.
do. And for our staff and our other employee groups, we've really, over the last 8 years, really tried to get systemic with the steps, and even even if we got really bad and we couldn't do a increase to any of the base, at least we can step, and it's like a 2.4, which is a typical cost of living. And when we set that up 8 years ago for our teachers and then our other employee groups, Joelle has really done a nice job of doing that and being able. So even if we're like, hey, we don't have a whole lot of new money, but we can at least step everybody. And prior to this group working, a lot of times there was teachers' salaries frozen or all employee groups frozen. And we purposely built these schedules to be kind of recession, financial kind of proof, to where at least you're going to get a step. You know, you can at least generate that money to do a step.
Never want to freeze, right, girls?
Yeah, no, we don't like that word
Been there,
around
done
here.
that, right?
No.
Yeah. So That's the biggest part of the chunk of where our ad is. I mean, like you said, there's not really any additions. That's where all the money is going. The next slide, other expense reductions. A big one here at the very top is certificates of participation, which is like a leasehold revenue bonds. This is principal and interest on debt. The key on these ones is that it's paid from the operating funds. So we had planned this with the bond issue, Prop 2024, that we would refinance some of the COPS into debt. So two portions to this. We're going to pay off 2 certificates of participation, which are just a fancy word for debt, principal and interest. One is being refinanced to the debt service side, which has its own levy and has plenty of room to make those payments. And then the other one we are going to pay off from bond proceeds. We use certificates of participation to do invest in our energy program, 12 million. That was probably 7 years ago.
No, it was in
When
2019. It was with the
2019?
first, it was the first part of the first Prop R, the 2019 prop. So let me just take a moment here. So the first props that Joelle's talking about was when the board made a conscious decision to get these to finish out the high school project. Because it was, do we go ahead and borrow this money now and do the Idea Center, do the additional parking, do the turf field, all of those things, or do we just pause and then our high school will be under construction for like 10 years? And the board at that time made a conscious decision to go ahead and get that money, use future bond money, which we knew we were gonna be going in 24 for this prop, and refinance those and pay it off, but the high school would be done 2 years to 3 years earlier. So that's those COPS. The other COPS, like Joelle said, we had not planned to pay those off early because those were designed as we save money on utilities and electricity and things because we upgraded systems. They would pay the mortgage or pay the payment on that. Well, after COVID, everything went like this, and if we hadn't done that, we would have really been losing money. It's really been kind of breaking even. But because of the financial lack of increase from state funding and other things in this non-reassessment year, we have made a conscious choice to use prop dollars that we didn't originally have. So we're postponing maybe some projects and things that we maybe could have done out of Prop 24. We're going to do all of the projects we said we would do in 24, but like a lot of props, if we're really good with our money, we can do other kinds of other things that we need to do that we didn't guarantee the community we would do. We're going to use that money to pay these off because it frees up operating dollars. And that's a big, it was like almost $900,000.
Yeah, 900,000
is what it's freeing up out of operating dollars. So, but we just felt like we had to do that because of what's going on in Jeff City
And our budgets
all
have
that.
been good.
You guys know me, I love to build things, right? So to give up 4.3 million.
I'm ready to get this money out of his
to
hands.
do that, I was like, man, all right, but it's the right thing to do. And so, and I just, I went to Joelle and I said, we've got to do it. I said, let's just.
What?
Yeah, I know. I was like, yeah. So we got to do it because we got to have that in the operating. So we just need it. So.
Yeah, and we've been able to do it too because our construction budgets have been coming in very good, or under budget. And then we've had interest, we sold bonds at a premium, and so that money's sitting there. But again, in the past, you probably would have spent that on additional projects, but we're gonna move that.
Yeah. And what's nice is now the district has nothing capital construction hitting our operating budget. And, when I came 8 years ago, we did have some of those that we got rid of recently.
It's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
The next one are things we've talked about at different points in the year, but community programs, we're working to make sure that those programs across the board cover their direct cost. Again, it's not all cost, but the direct cost. We've made some changes this year that will help with that. As far as our energy management, we're not gonna get rid of that. We are saving money on energy. We do meet monthly and talk about energy and do things in the district, but we're going to kind of downsize that, get a district software, and probably do something close to what a wellness group we have here is, have building champions that work with Keith and Scott on a regular basis about what's happening in their buildings. We think that'll take it closer to home, but we're gonna do some of that reporting ourselves. Self-insured insurance fund, premium versus claims, that's another one where we're looking at. And then one time, again, it's at the bottom, we're gonna divert this year, for some of the things, we're gonna divert one-time expenditures to the prop for this year, just because of the revenue is so low, and we have prop funds to cover those one-time expenditures. And then our cost savings reduction plan, when I looked at those numbers, we're actually paying out less than we did in last year. And if you know, we pay that out normally in July, but we've shifted that for cash flow reasons that we're gonna pay a portion of it July, and then we're gonna pay the other portion in late December, so that it's after we get our tax money. So, but that's gonna be less than it was in prior year. So that's our expenditure reductions. If anyone has any questions? These are other expenditures. Again, Farmers Club, it's gonna be a one-time startup. Transportation has a 4% contract renewal. You know, transportation's expensive, and we are gonna get less money from the state next year. They're funding it at about 94% this year. Next year, they're talking about 90. We are going to be adding some summer school transportation, just because we have so many kids in summer school this year because of the reading requirement. That's identified more kids, and we need to get them to and from summer school. I didn't put any number on utility rate increases, because I'm hoping if I don't talk about it, it'll go down. Just filled up my car at
Speaking
lunch.
to the lady that's retiring here, June 30th.
I know, but when I filled my gas up today, I was like, what? This is not crazy, $4.
So, speaking of that, this may be a dumb question. How does the fuel price affect our transportation?
Well,
do we carry that
we have
increase?
not had a fuel charge, they have not stuck us with a full, fuel surcharge yet. We have not talked about that. So I'm crossing my fingers and I'm not bringing it
That's
up.
why she's not
Like I
talking
said,
about
if I don't talk about it, maybe it won't happen, but that is in our contract that, with transportation, that if it gets to a certain point, there will be a fuel surcharge.
Okay.
And so, on the other side, you know, our maintenance vehicles and things like that, they're not as much, but the transportation is the one as I worry about. You know, they keep saying every week, oh, it's gonna go down, or things are gonna change, and like I said, let's not talk about it.
It never goes down as quick as it goes up.
Let's not talk about it. Tara has had an odd thing in her budget with transportation, homeless transportation. The numbers are way up. I did look, when I'm looking at basic formula for state money, you have to look at free and reduced, ELL, and then December 1 special ed count. All of those counts are up in our district. And so and it's not cheap. That's a transient group, so you never know. You may have to transport one of them a whole year, or you may be 6 months, but those costs are rising. And then we have Beth's add to the budget, which we're really excited about, which is expansion of the OnFlow platform, which we think if communication is better, it's going to increase productivity. You know, some of the people that get questions all the time will have less time answering questions and more time focusing on production. And so that's a great platform that we're getting ready to add the first of the year. Next slide, real quick, just debt. You can go to the next slide. We're not doing anything with our debt this year. We're keeping our 83-cent levy that we've promised taxpayers. We are moving those cops into our debt, but we have plenty of room to pay for that. It's really just gonna be paying principal and interest, and we have the dollars there. I do hope, again, on the legislative side, that they don't make debt service subject to the rollback, because that will be a game changer as well. We've done a good job in this district to use the equity in our home, the home that we're never gonna sell, to make improvements, and if they start rolling back that levy with AV, we're gonna see our facilities be impacted negatively again. So, no changes unless legislation changes. So last slide, balanced budget, new revenue equal new expenditures, efficiency in all operations, strategic spending, ongoing long-range planning. That's something that is always done in this district. Even if it's not a strategic plan year, those are discussed. Debt management and fund balance. Our goal, again, is balance, but we like to put a little bit back if we can at the end of the year. Now I gotta go right to my compass goal. You sure you don't want
No,
Beth to take it?
Let's take a pause for a second. So questions, comments, because we have about
10 minutes.
10 minutes, but what I'm thinking is in July, Brian, you're gonna have the health insurance, correct? Jason, we can bring you back in July and have you do that presentation to kind of kick off, the start of the next school year with Senate Bill 68 and everything that we've done. And then Beth and Dominic and Joelle can kind of finish their goals if you guys want.
I
You'll
won't
see-
be here in July.
Oh, yeah, Mark can do that. So unless you want to try to get through these, I mean.
They're quick, easy. I mean, I
We
think
do
it could
have
be
a
a Friday
couple big
packet item.
items to talk about. I think it's going to have some discussion in exec session, so I think it's probably best if we aren't rushed, so.
We get to
Any-
visit Compass Goals again in June, so.
Yeah, so we could do that, so. Any questions for Joelle? You know, Joelle is definitely going to be missed, but we're excited about Mark coming in and, you know, Mark's been in these conversations all spring with us on budgeting and with the outlook and all of that, so. Questions?
Dr. Lake, since this is the workshop, and I know
Yes.
we'll have a facilities update later, but this is the workshop. What people visually see is all the construction.
Yep.
So when, can you just share real quick which buildings are gonna end? Maybe some will end this summer, some next summer?
Sure.
Cause that looks like, oh wow, there's lots of money.
Yeah, so just to answer that just quickly is that they're two different pots of money. So the debt service is what the taxpayers vote on to do the construction piece. That can't be used for salaries, programs, operational kinds of things unless it's a capital kind of improvement. So they're just two different things. All of our projects will be done for the most part, 27, 28 school year. So we'll see, most things will be done in 27, maybe some things going into the fall of 27, but Sappington is our last one that'll be done summer of 27. There may be a little bit, if there's some dollars left at the end, we have some parking lot kind of projects that we would like to potentially do as well. And that's parking lot projects minus the 4.3 million we're using to pay off those cops in the operating levy too. But two different pots of money, can't be used the same. But like I said, we have gotten this done quickly because we want, we want the students that are here to experience that. Like, we just got an occupancy, and they were actually in the gym today at Long. And so those fifth graders, even though they're getting ready to go on to a beautiful new remodeled middle school in the fall at Truman, they're getting to use their new gym here at the end of their fifth grade year. And so we're excited about that for them. And yeah, so I just say it's like getting a new outfit, just makes you feel a little better. You know, you walk into that new building, all remodeled and fresh. Yeah, so, and then, yeah, so I just feel like it's all coming together really fast. So Long and Kennerly will be done this summer, as well as Concord. Concord is a minor facelift, because that building actually was, when they put that addition on, they actually did a lot of things to it. So it's a small facelift. So those three buildings will be done this summer.
Got the Farmers Club permit today.
Yes, Farmers
So-
Club. That's for a whole nother story there. What? So anyways. Yep, thanks, Joelle.
Thank you. You guys are part of why we have a good budget. I mean,
Yep.
I don't build it alone. I build it with you guys as a team, and you make very good decisions. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you again to everyone who presented tonight. It was a very informative workshop as usual. So do I have a motion to adjourn Board Workshop 1633?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Meg and a second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Board Workshop 1633 is adjourned.